Hello, my name is Kaylee Acuna. I am a solution specialist for Encore Business Solutions, and today I'm going to do a brief session on general navigation training. This is training for Microsoft Dynamics 365 Finance and Supply Chain Management, F&O for short. So we're going to walk through some basics on how to navigate in the system, some tips and tricks I've learned for how to navigate between the modules and various fields, in the hopes that it eases your initial training when using the system. Okay, so the screen I've got in front of me is this is just one of our test systems. It's got sample data, and this is what the home page for F&O looks like. So, as just a clarifying point, I am a system administrator, so what I see on this homepage may not mimic exactly what you'll see on the homepage. As a sysadmin, I've got access to all the modules in the system, and as an end user, you may only have access to a handful of these modules. Okay, so diving right in, this homepage, as you can see, has this banner up at the top. This is the logo for our sample company. Yours would be specific to your company. And then in the middle, you see all of these tiles. These are specific links to workspaces in the system. So you can click on them if you choose. I don't usually navigate to workspaces this way, but this, if you're working in one specific module over and over again, it can be a really easy and fast way to jump between workspaces. So that's what these are called. These are tiles. If you look in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see there's a variety of buttons. So there's this little gear here, and these are the settings. If I click on this, you'll see it opens up a menu and we can select user options. So these user options are going to be specific to your personal login. So if I go ahead and click user options, it's going to take us to a screen that again is specific to my personal user experience. So right away you can see that you can choose a color for your environment. Again, this will only affect your version of F&O when you log in. This won't affect other users. So you can choose to change the color. I'm going to go ahead and change mine to green just so that you can see what that looks like. Right here, this is the grid size. This just changes the sort of the resolution of the tiles that we saw in the beginning. A couple other important things to note. On the left-hand side, you can see there's a Preferences tab. If I go ahead and click on Preferences, this is going to give you the option to change your time zone so that all of the things you're seeing in the system will be tailored to the time zone that's selected here. This can be really useful if you've got, remote workers and people are in different time zones and you want to be able to see information that is specific to your time zone. So that's what that is. Another important thing to see here is this workflow, and we'll get into this a little bit more later, but if you're a user who has um, approval responsibilities for things and you are going to be out of town, this is where you would set up delegation for your out of town work. So if you say, Joe Smith is the person who is going to be filling in for me while I'm out of the office, you can go here and you can say that that person will receive the notifications from F&O while you're out of town. All right. So if I want to navigate back to the home screen, if I'm in this grid and I want to go back home, I can go up into the upper left-hand corner and click Finance and Operations. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. And as you can see, it takes me back to this home screen where all of these tiles are displayed. Another thing that's important from this home page, in the upper right-hand corner, again, what we just went through is this settings menu. Just a little bit to the left, you see this magnifying glass. I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and it's going to open up a little search bar. So this search bar is really useful, especially when you're new to the system and you're trying to find workspaces maybe that you saw in a training, but you aren't able to navigate there manually. This search bar is going to be a really helpful tool for finding things in the system when you're learning. Yeah, those are the two things I would use up there. This is simply for alerts. Up here, if you see messages from the system, this is where they'll be displayed, and this is just a feedback link. All right, So now if we go over to the left-hand side, you can see there's these buttons here. This top one is called the Hamburger menu. I'm going to go ahead and click on this, and it's going to expand the menu on the side. You can see that there's a little safety pin icon up at the top. If you want to keep this menu permanently open, you can click that, and it will actually just keep it permanently open. But I like to have mine minimized, so it looks like this. So whenever you hear me refer to the hamburger menu, I'm talking about this button over here on the left-hand side. So if I click this, you'll see four different options underneath the home button. This, by the way, is another way to get back to this main screen where you see all the tiles. So you can click finance and operations, or you can actually just click this home button and it'll bring you back here. But from here, underneath this list, you can see there's favorites, recent, workspaces, and modules. Now, everything that happens in the system happens in a module, regardless of your role. So whether you're in accounts receivable, or maybe you work in production, or you work in sales orders, there's going to be different modules that you work in. And favorites is a way for you to save things that you navigate to on a regular basis. And I'll show you what that means, or what that looks like in just a second. Recent, and this is really helpful, recent is going to show you all of the places that you navigated to recently, right? So if you went somewhere and maybe you don't go there all the time, so it's not stored as one of your favorites, but you went somewhere and it was really helpful and you don't remember where that was, it was probably stored here in your recent list. This list will continually update as you navigate through the system, and things you go to regularly will, of course, also show up here, but this can be a really helpful tool when you're first poking around in the system and you're not quite sure where to go. The next one below this is called workspaces. So if I click workspaces, it pulls up this big long list, and it's actually in alphabetical order, and these correlate directly to the tiles here on this home screen. So if you can see in the upper left-hand corner, the first tile is bank management. That's also the first workspace listed here. These go to the exact same place. It's just two different ways to display the same link, right? One is a tile, one is in this workspace module. And the bottom one, and this is the most commonly used one, of course, is modules. This is sort of the meat of the system. Again, this is listed in alphabetical order, so you can see all of the modules available in the system. Again, I am a system administrator, so I see everything. You may have a limited view of the modules depending on what your security role is and what your business role will be using the system. All right, so I'm going to show for my demonstration today simply how to navigate to customer records. Customer records are pretty common across all businesses, so navigating to that data is going to be a really common thing to do. So to do that, I'm going to go to the accounts receivable module. So I'm going to click here, and it's going to open up this submenu. And right away, you can see there's an expand all and a collapse all button at the top. What this does will expand all of these submenus or collapse all of the submenus. This can be helpful when you're first learning how to navigate through the system and you're not exactly sure where you need to be. So if I click expand all, you'll see it opens up all of these links. This is every link available within this accounts receivable module. If I go ahead and click collapse, it's going to minimize them all again so that you can see them more easily. Something I've learned over the years that's really helpful, especially if I'm working in modules that maybe I'm not familiar with or that I'm new to. If I know I'm looking for customers or something called customers and I don't know where to go, I can click expand all and actually do just a control F on my web browser and type keywords that are helpful. So you see I've typed the word customer in my search bar here in my browser, and it highlights just all of the places where the word customer shows up. Customer is, of course, a uh, commonly used word in a lot of these links, which is why there's so many highlighted options here. But if you're looking to narrow down what you're searching for, this can be a really helpful tool to use. All right, so for our purposes, I'm just going to navigate to customers. So I'm going to choose to expand simply the customers menu. And if you recall from earlier, I talked about this favorites menu. If I hover over this all customers menu link here, you can see that on the right-hand side of this, there's a star. If I click this star, you can see it's now filled in and it says it's added to favorites. So if I were to minimize this module now and I go up here to my favorites, you'll see now that all customers link is present in my favorites list. So again, this is a really helpful tool if you are going to the same handful of links multiple times a day or you don't want to have to navigate there manually every time. So this is saved in my favorites. I could also go to accounts receivable, click on customers, and click on all customers. Similarly, with the favorites menu, I can also click on the recent menu and the all customers link will also be there because I've of course been here recently. So if you see here again on the left hand side, if I expand recent, you see at the very top it says all customers because of course this is the grid I've navigated to most recently. You can actually see that it indicates here that this has also been added to my favorites list. So if I minimize this and go to favorites, there it is also. Okay, so this is what a standard grid looks like in F&O. What's nice about F&O is there's a lot of consistency between the grids across all the modules in the system. So once you get familiar with um, using one grid and when you get comfortable with modifying them, those tools and those skills that you've learned for one particular grid will apply to all the other grids in the system. So that's really helpful. It's also helpful when learning it for the first time because you'll start to see similarities between the grids that will make the learning curve a little bit smaller when using new modules. So this is what a grid looks like. You can see in the top here, there's this what we call the action pane. This is the top navigational menu. This is where we've got all these tabs available to us. We've got the customer tab, the sell tab, the invoice tab. All of these tabs do different things. And the tab is generally an indicator of the type of actions that can be taken on the record for the module that we're currently located in. So right now I'm in the all customers grid. So the actions available to me at the top will pertain to the management of these customer records, right? So for example, if I select this customer here, it's called the Contoso parent account. At the top, I can see I have the option to do collection services. I can review credit management. I can actually view statistics about this customer and take some actions here as well. Now, to clarify, I have not yet entered this customer record. I'm simply looking at the list of all the customers in this particular system. So we call that a grid. It's a grid of all the customers. And I'll show you in a little bit what it's like to actually drill into this record and some of the things that you can do within that record. So before we do that though, I want to highlight that this grid is just the way it looks is out of the box. There are no special things that have been added to it. However, there may be cases where when you are working, there's information that you want to see in this grid without having to drill into every single customer. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So let's say, for example, you need to know in which order customers were created. So we want to see like the created date and time. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and insert a new column into this grid. At the top here, you can see there's account, there's name, invoice account, and so on. And if I hover over them, you can see that it highlights them in gray. So this is that top, the column headers essentially. If I right click on this column header bar, I can click Insert Column. And what this is going to do is allow me to select from a predetermined list of available fields in F&O to add to this grid. So I'm going to go ahead and sort from A to Z so that I can easily find the field that I want. And I mentioned created date and time, so I'm going to go ahead and select that created date and time here. And I'm going to just click Update. What this is going to do is it's going to add the created date and time information to this grid, and it's going to display it for all of the customers in our system. You can see also, and this is important to note, this blue bar has appeared at the top of the screen. Blue simply means it's an informational bar. This happens when it's just letting you know that it's performed an action that you've asked. So in this case, I added this new column, and it's simply saying that in order to see the updated data for the column that I've added, you'll need to refresh. If I were to see a message bar at the top that's either yellow or red, those are important messages. A red message bar generally means there's an error. A yellow message bar is a warning of some kind, but you'll want to make sure to take a look at those. And those will be, again, consistent across all the modules in the system. That's what the message bars look like. And I realized I just did something that I'd like to call out as well. As a part of this grid, all of the records within this grid, there's options here in the upper right-hand corner. So on the far right, there's just the standard Windows icon for opening a new window. This will actually take the grid that you're in and it will expand it to a separate browser tab completely. So if you need to keep a customer record pulled up while also navigating somewhere else, you can choose to pop this grid out into another window. This little circle here is what it looks like. It's a refresh button. It's really important when you're operating in F&O to try to stay away from using your browser buttons up here. And by browser buttons, I mean, of course, like your Google Chrome or your Microsoft Edge refresh and back buttons. Try to stick within this refresh button, and that's because the data that's operating within F&O is updating real time. There's a lot happening, and so when you refresh from here, it has a more consistent result than if you refresh in the browser. If I move one to the left, you'll see this little paper clip. This simply means attachments, and I'm not going to get into detail about what that means, but if you need to add notes or something to these records, attachments is where you could do that. Something I do want to call out is this open in Microsoft Office. This is the icon for Office. So if I go ahead and click on this, it's going to pull up several options for how to work with this data in this grid in Excel. So there's important things with the way this is displayed, though. You can see at the top this says open in Excel, and then down here it says export to Excel. So F&O has this really great tool for using Excel add-ins to be able to manipulate large groups of data by putting them into Excel. But you want to be careful with doing that because it also means you can make bulk changes to the system by dumping it into Excel. So open in Excel means there is a maintained link between F&O and Excel. And then export to Excel simply means the data, in this case customers, has just been dumped to a spreadsheet and you can do whatever you need to do with it. So that's a really important thing to do. And again, that option is available across the system in any of the grids that you're going to work in. All right, so I went ahead and added my created date and time. If I want to make sure to save this view so that this is available next time, I need to go ahead and save it. So if I click standard view here, I'm going to click save as, and I'm going to, it by default says my view. I'm going to change this to be my name, Kaylee's view. And I'm going to pin it as my default. So the next time I come in, it's going to show as this view, and I'm going to click save. If you don't do that, then the next time you come into this grid, if you were to navigate away or close it, it won't have that column that you added. So that's an important thing to remember. All right, so we've added a column, we've saved our view, we've learned how to export this list to Excel if need be. Now let's take a look at the actual customer record itself. So I'm going to click here on the account number. You can see it's a blue underlined link. That means it's a hyperlink. You can go ahead and click on it. F&O is designed really well in such a way that you can quickly jump to all of these different places, and anything that's blue, that's an underlined blue link, is a hyperlink that you can drill into. And I'm sure as you're learning the system, you'll do that by accident. You know, if you click on this, it's actually going to take you to the settings for customer group, for example. And it's easy to kind of panic if you get there by accident, but F&O is designed in such a way that it's really easy to just get back to the screen that you were in simply by drilling out or drilling in. And what I mean by that is if I were to click here on customer group 20, let's say I did this by accident, this is going to take me to the specific settings for that value. And I say, oh, whoops, I didn't want to be here. I want to go back to that customer account, I didn't want to come here, you can go ahead and just click this arrow and it takes you back to the grid that you were in previously. So always remember, even if you were to click multiple times, you can always drill back out again. Similarly to the grid that we were looking at, you can see there's a top menu. The options are going to be slightly different when you're drilled in because you can do more within an individual record from here. And so you can click between these tabs and manipulate this customer record data based on the options you see up here. And again, these menu options in the upper right-hand corner are also the same as the ones that were on the grid. They're exactly the same. It's just allowing you those same tools, but instead of looking at that list of full customers, you're looking at this particular account. Within this account, you can see it's broken down into these sort of subsections. This first section here is just called general. This next one's called address. This is just standard information that pertains to customers in general. You can actually choose to expand or minimize these menus, and this will allow you to change how you're seeing this record and tailor it to see the information that's most relevant to you. So you can see I just clicked on this header here for the address and it minimized it. Say you don't need to actually look at addresses, it takes up quite a bit of the screen, so you can just have it minimized. Similarly with the general tab, if the information in there isn't useful to you, you can simply click on it and minimize and maximize. It's worth noting too, you can see there are several of these sections. You don't have to go through and minimize and maximize them individually if you want to see all of them. You can right click on any of these headers and simply click expand all or collapse all to minimize or expand all of these menus, and then you can do each one individually after that if you need. So just a few different ways to manage the records that you're looking at. Yeah, super, super useful. Another thing that comes up pretty often is the ability, of course, to add or remove a field from here. So I showed you how to add a column in the grid. So let's say that that same information you want to be available here in this record as well, the drilled in sort of detail version of the customer records. Similarly to how in the grid we right clicked and we clicked insert column, we're going to right click here. We're going to click personalize. And we're going to click add a field. And it's going to bring up a menu that looks exactly the same as the one we saw in the grid. Again, I'm going to sort it from A to Z, and I'm going to choose the field that I would like to add to this grid, or I'm sorry, this detailed record. I'm going to add created date and time. I'm going to click update, and it's going to go ahead and add that field to this record. You can see it right here. Similarly with the grid, also, if you want to save this so that every time you come into any customer record, it shows their created date and time, you're going to have to save that personalized view. So you can go ahead and click standard view over here in the left-hand corner. You're going to click save as. By default, it's called my view. I'm going to again change it to be Kaylee's view. I'm going to pin it as default. I only want it to be for my current legal entity, and I'm going to click save. Now, every time I come into a customer record, you can see Kaylee's view. And I'm going to show you if I were to go into this account and say I've got the information that I need, I want to go back to that customer grid and go into another account. I don't have to go all the way home to do that. You can simply go back. I clicked the arrow in the upper left-hand corner. I can click on another account. So I was going to go into this Contoso Retail Portland. I'm going to click on the account number. It's going to drill me into this record. You can see it still says that I'm viewing my personalized view. I saved it with my name, and it shows this created date and time here. And let's say this was the wrong account. I could just go back again and pick a different account. And you can do this as much as you want. It's really easy. You don't have to go all the way home again and then all the way back in again. Another thing that's worth noting, if you don't want to scroll through, if your list of customers is like this one and it's really long and you don't want to scroll through to find the customer you're looking for, there's a filter box here. You can also filter on any one of the columns at any point. Similarly to Excel, when you click on this little down arrow under the name here, you can simply select, oh, it says custom column is not filterable. Interesting. So all customers, and we can select a name here, and I'm going to pick because I think there's a customer. Let's say you don't know what the exact name of the customer is. There's a concept in F&O called a wildcard, and that means that you're going to ask the system to search for anything that contains a word, so it's not an exact match. So the wildcard in F&O is actually an asterisk, it's a star. So I'm going to say star, star. That means anything that contains the words I want it to search for. So I'm going to click enter, and it pulls up any customer that has the name. And then if you want to, delete this, you simply delete it and click enter, and it'll return you to all of the customers here. All right. If you find yourself in a place in the system where if you don't remember how you got there, but you want to take note of it, at the very top here, you can see what we call a breadcrumb menu. This is telling you the module that you clicked into, the section, and then the specific link that you drilled into. So if you found something, you want to make sure to save it to your favorites, but you didn't do so before you came in here, you can always use that breadcrumb menu to tell you where you are. I mentioned this little magnifying glass at the top. If you don't, again, recall where you found something useful, but you know it was called all customers, you can type the word customer in this menu, and it's going to pull up a list of all of the sections in the system that contain that word. So you can see it gives you a breadcrumb menu underneath each one because the ability to access customers exists in several modules. And this particular example, we went to accounts receivable and customers, and I can see that that's right here. So you can click on this and it'll also bring you to this same place. So just a few tips and tricks. This is standard general navigation that is helpful across, again, all the modules in the system. All of the grids look the same. They simply contain different data, but the way that you can manipulate them is very consistent and very useful. I hope this was helpful for you. Please let me know if you have any questions or if there's any content that you'd like to see in the future. Thank you.